Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Knockout Podcast, episode 49 now. We are creeping up towards that half century, and you join me, Ben, on another week where we've been greeted with quite a lot of fights to talk about. We had the triple title card, two of which ended in somewhat bizarre circumstances, but we'll get onto that. I'm joined as ever by Jack. Jack, how are you doing? We've got quite the set of cards, well, quite the set of fights, rather, I should say, to look back on.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I enjoyed the fights. As you said, some unexpected and bizarre things occurring, but they make good stories often. So not too bad. But yeah, no, I'm pretty good.
Lovely stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we may as well jump straight into it because there is, as we sort of alluded to, there's quite a lot of talking points. So let's just go, I guess, right to the top of the card. Jan Blachowicz, Izzy Adesanya. Blachowicz getting the 40. I mean, some of the scorecards interesting. 49-46, 49-45, 49-45. I mean, first off, how did you sort of have this scored?
Well, I think I scored it 48-47 probably. The case for 10-8 in the fifth isn't great, but it's possible by the kind of like newish criteria because Jan got him down and kind of just completely controlled him on the ground for like the second half of the round, and was also, like, for my money, winning the striking in the fifth round as well. So he pretty much controlled the majority of that round completely and got off the best shots, I think. So I wouldn't give it a 10-8, but it's not unreasonable. But then also I wouldn't have given Jan the first, which I think he got on every judge's scorecard. Although it's a close round, but I think I went with 48-47.
Yeah, I think I was the same as you. I think I'd like first and third for Izzy, and then the rest just all 10-9 for Jan. I mean, bias commentary aside, which was, I think that's probably another topic. I mean, in terms of the actual fight, I mean, we'll get to Jan, but I guess the story was Adesanya coming in and coming up. I mean, what sort of went wrong? I mean, a lot of feints. I mean, I know they were going on about it a lot, about how Blachowicz was sort of biting on every feint, and he was. But Izzy, for my mind, he couldn't get the jab going as much as he would have liked. He was the bigger guy in there in terms of height, but I'm not sure just the sheer size of Blachowicz didn't really work. And he was getting Blachowicz to bite on the feints, but then not actually using them. He was sort of like biting on the feints and then not actually firing anything over the top of it.
Yeah, he was having trouble like building on that. And you can't really you can't talk to that without talking about Blachowicz.
Yeah.
The reason that Adesanya likes to obviously build off the feints, but his like weapons at range to kind of get you worried about the threats of the feints are the jab and the low kick, and he really couldn't get either of those going. The low kick he struggled with because Blachowicz, one of the better guys in MMA, really, about being really defensively disciplined against low kicks. He does check them very consistently. So Adesanya had a lot of trouble getting the low kick going, I think, for that reason. And then the jab, Blachowicz did counter him like fairly consistently and did a good job about that. And he also, one of the things that we mentioned in our preview was that he should jab and double jab with Izzy, because that will really kind of disrupt him and stop him getting going. And he did that very well. I thought Jan's jab in this fight looked fantastic. So I think like kind of a combination of all that meant that Izzy was far more impotent than he is usually on the offense, when he's being offensive. So I think, for that reason, he just really couldn't get the game he wanted going. But I give all credit to Jan for that. I think he looked fantastic in that regard.
Yeah, I definitely think, as you say, Izzy did miss some opportunities, but I think a lot of that was down to Jan. We talk about with Izzy, a lot of his fights and a lot of his successes coming from shutting down the opposition's game. the Paulo Costa fight didn't, Paulo Costa couldn't get his game going at all. And I think what we saw there from Jan was, getting his game going with the takedowns, with the jab, but also just not letting Izzy get his sort of pace and his sort of style going, which I think was really impressive. And I think he probably showed a level of fight IQ that not many people were expecting. I think, and probably us, we underestimated it as well. A lot of people were just like, oh, if he can get the takedowns, if he can use his size in the clinch. But actually, he proved he's a technical guy. And, as you said, with blocking the leg kicks, coming back with the jabs, obviously used the takedowns. And when he got the takedowns, the size was very apparent. But yeah, I think it was a really, really cracking performance, and certainly one I didn't see coming.
Yeah, and I don't think many people did. I think we did talk about the possibilities for Jan in there. It was just you can always talk about some possibilities for fighters. It's just whether or not they can kind of convince themselves to do it, or like actually go and do that. And we thought the route for Jan was kind of quite low percentage, but he went out and put on like essentially the performance of his lifetime, like against the best opponent he's ever fought. He fought probably his best fight. And yeah, the takedowns were fantastic. He set them up very well. And didn't go to them till late. So he'd really got Izzy kind of like thinking they were in a striking match. And then he used his striking very well to set up the takedowns. So yeah, that was very good. And then, as you said, I think the size did make a big difference once it was there. We said that we think that would be a good route for Jan if he can get it into the clinch consistently and then kind of put his size on Izzy. He didn't really get it into the clinch, but did make it count with the takedowns. And then another thing we talked about is that Jan had opportunities, but that generally as a fighter, he's not particularly disciplined and he'll go for those kind of weird, crazy blitzes. And he didn't really do that. At least he did it a few times, but not very often. And they were more controlled than usual, I think. And that was something Adesanya said in the post-fight press conference. He was like, one of the things that he expected to take advantage of with Jan was the blitzers. And they weren't there really to be taken advantage of. And I think that was one thing that that must have been something that Izzy kind of built a game plan around and expected to punish him there. And because he didn't get those opportunities, it might have he just might have not have been able to kind of build himself into the fight in other ways. So yeah, we did spend quite a lot of time talking about that discipline from Jan. And he kind of showed us really, he showed that he can fight a disciplined fight in that regard and stick to the game plan like over the course of 5 rounds. So yeah, just like Jan Blachowicz overall, like where he started in his career to kind of where he's come to now is like genuinely like a fantastic story. Like he's improved so much. And he's now 38 and he's still getting better. Like, so that's very impressive. It's like a marvel to think of like, if Jan was as good when he was like 28 as he is now when he's 38, how good he could have been. Like if he just had like this development earlier in his career, I think he could have been like truly like one of the all-time greats. But obviously like he's 38 now, there's going to be a limit on like how far he can go. But still,
talk about all-time greats. I don't know. We'll see how he goes when he finishes, but could certainly be right up in that conversation for not all-time great, but for one of the best European fighters.
Or European, certainly. I
can't. Bisping maybe is the other guy that.
I mean, Khabib's a European fighter.
Oh, and Khabib, yeah. I guess.
There are a few good ones.
Yeah, to be fair, but I would say certainly, getting up there.
Yeah. So I think it's good stuff from Jan. I was genuinely very impressed, and he seems like a really like solid guy overall. So I'm I was very happy for him. I felt like I came in kind of wanting and expecting Adesanya to win, but was prepared to be very happy if Blachowicz pulled it off, and he did.
Yeah,
and I was very happy for him, to be honest.
Yeah, no. Well, it looks like we've now got very much the old man light heavyweight match up next. I think it should be Blachowicz and Glover to share, which will be, well, we'll see what happens when that and for Izzy. I imagine he's will head back down to middleweight, I guess, to fight whoever. I'm not really sure. We shall see. But we'll move on. Well, next one down. Probably not spend
Not
too much time on it.
about.
I mean, Amanda Nunes, Megan Anderson disband the 145s.
Yeah, I think they actually have officially disbanded the division. They released Megan Anderson, and I think they have just cut the division.
So actually, this is. Yeah, I mean, dominant from Nunes. I mean, Megan Anderson or Megan Anderson just looked like a deer in headlights, just scared out of her minds, and just one punch, she was down, submission, arm triangle, done. I would say there is one fight scheduled in the women's featherweight division. Felicia Spencer, so it's in May. Felicia Spencer, so a good name, although has been battered by Amanda Nunes, versus Danielle Wolf. Can you give me a guess of Danielle Wolf's MMA record?
Oh, I'm gonna go with something like 4-5.
No, try 1-0.
Oh, okay, brilliant. That's even weirder.
Her first fight was on the Dana White Contender Series.
What's a division?
She's got. To be fair, she's got quite a esteemed like boxing amateur boxing background. I think she's won like the National Golden Gloves and the US National Championships. But still very bizarre. So yeah, I mean, who knows what will happen with that, because you probably expect Felicia Spencer to win, but you're not going to give her to Amanda Nunes again. And then you can't seriously be telling me Amanda Nunes is going to genuinely have to fight a 2-0 fighter if Danielle Wolf beats her. I mean, I think for my money and who knows whether it's actually been disbanded. I think the UFC came out and said it hadn't officially been.
Oh, I thought it had. Maybe it hasn't then.
Well, I think they came out and denied it officially, but I think essentially what Dana White said, which essentially was what I was thinking, was the only reason that, they'll keep it alive as long as Nunes is there and wants to fight in the division, essentially just for the marketing, so they can still call her a champ.
Yeah.
What other purpose does that division serve other than just ensuring that Nunes stays a double champ?
Yeah. Which, whatever. Like, for some people can care about that. I don't know. Like, it doesn't really add anything to her legacy for me, just because people she's fighting, just don't care about. It is what it is. Like, between two divisions, there's like almost no one for her to fight. Like, who's the top contender at 135?
Yeah, I think it's Juliana Pena they're talking about.
Is it? Well, maybe, but there's just not much for her. So it's a difficult situation for her. Like, it'd be great if there was a stacked division where she could defend twice a year against solid, deserving contenders, but it just doesn't exist, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens for next, but I think definitely a move down to 135. I mean, there's not great fights there, but there's certainly a hell of a lot better fights than at 145. Okay, the last of our title fights we had. A joke of a fight, quite a good fight, and then another one that ended in quite bizarre circumstances. We'll get to that, but the actual fight as a whole, which I don't think has received as much attention as perhaps it did. I mean, Sterling came out the gates quick.
Yeah.
Very quick out the gates. And I thought at the start, I thought, wow, Jan's actually not quite sure what to do here. He looked quite flustered and quite surprised by the pressure, especially in that sort of first round, although did get the knockdown and then get the takedown, and then I think actually win the round.
Yeah.
But then as the fight went on, especially into that fourth, and towards the end of that third, I was just thinking this is just a Jan special. Just putting it on. Sterling's cardio was fading, probably because of what Jan was doing, but also because of the crazy pressure he set on himself early on. But it did look like Jan was taking over the fight before the sort of knee incident.
Yeah, as you said, the fight hasn't received that much attention, which is quite sad because it was a great fight up until that point. What we did talk about in our preview was one good thing for Sterling to do probably was to go out and really take it to Jan early and try and get the finish early. That were his best chances, and he did try that. Obviously, like that's what he did. And Jan was a bit, I suppose, yeah, kind of flustered by that. He is kind of a slow starter. He does like to get his reads. So when Sterling came out that quick, I think he wasn't quite expecting it, or just didn't quite feel comfortable yet, and he did seem a bit like not shaken. He's a difficult man to shake, but just not at his best. Although I've rewatched it since, and he did look fairly tight defensively. A lot of the shots from Sterling weren't actually getting through. The actual thing that Sterling had probably the most success with were the knees. He landed like 2 fairly solid knees on Jan. Other than that, Sterling's jabs were generally being blocked or parried by Jan. And then, yeah, as you said, he like late in the first, he kind of timed a jab and came back with a counter and knocked down Sterling, and then also kicked Sterling's leg out to kind of knock him down as well, and then actually had a very good showing in terms of like the wrestling as well. I think this was one of the things that like Jan is kind of underrated in, is that like he is very, very well rounded, and you saw that the wrestling exchanges were very even. Against Sterling, who is one of the better grapplers in MMA. So yeah, like that from Jan was fantastic. I also liked that early on when he was a bit flustered when Sterling came out like a bat out of hell, that Jan would use the wrestling, like he caught a kick and then like tripped Sterling, and he used that to kind of like just change the dynamic, let Sterling know that if you're coming out this quickly, you've also got this to worry about. And it just allowed Jan to kind of settle into the fight more and then get his own game going by interrupting Sterling's kind of rhythm. I thought he did that very well throughout the fight. And then, yeah, as you said, he built throughout the fight, going in like late third round and the fourth round for as long as it lasted. He was really taking it to Sterling, and it was looking like as that went on, it wasn't going to be a good night from Sterling from that point onwards. But no, I thought it was a great fight and a very good performance from Jan, and a valiant performance from Sterling, in terms of he pursued his best shot. He just couldn't get the finish, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, if we move to the incident, obviously, it didn't end sort of with a Jan late finish or a Jan victory, which I think it looked like it was heading. I'm not quite sure how it happened. Maybe it was another trip from Jan, but ended up with Sterling sort of on the ground, and Jan delivering a pretty on the money flush knee to a grounded opponent. I mean, I know there was, I think there's been some sort of news come out in the sort of like the past few days that some of his sort of English speaking corner was saying, yes, hit it. Oh, sorry, yes, punch him. Yes, punch him. So they were saying just punch.
Yeah.
And then I think his sort of Russian, side of his corner just said hit him. So that is perhaps where the sort of breakdown in communication happened. Nevertheless, probably, I mean, I'm not sort of well versed on the no contest /DQ. I think it probably would seem a DQ was like a fair result, but
so like there was a bit of miscommunication, I suppose, and like that is like unfortunate, but like it's got to be on Jan to know the rules. Like, you're a UFC champion, you have to know those rules. Like, it's just that is on you. The referee, like, you've been fighting for years, and the referee goes through the rules before the fight. Like in the locker room, like they say that before they come together. Like, we went through the rules in the back. You know what you did? Yeah. It's 100% on Jan to know that he just like it was such a blatant foul. It was like there is no like debate there. So it's on Jan, and I think the rules are that if it is an intentional foul, which it certainly was, and the fighter can't be judged to continue, then that is a disqualification. And I don't think Sterling was really in the position to continue.
No,
probably should have been like called off a little bit earlier. I don't think they should have made him go through all that. They made him go through essentially. They kind of probably should have stepped in a little bit earlier to stop that. But yeah, a very sad way to kind of like end the fight, especially as Jan was coming on strong and looked to be taking over. And certainly like for a fighter who generally in fight terms is so smart and builds so well, it's such a stupid decision. Like,
I know.
why would you do it? Like, just come on. No, I was very disappointed. I was like, Jan, you've ruined it.
Yeah, I mean, they will obviously run it back. It'll be interesting to see what happens now because, as you say, they've essentially got 4 rounds of sort of data of fighting the other person. Yeah. I think I'd probably still be confident in my Jan prediction, but yeah, they'll run it back. I think the only person really who's going to be feeling shortchanged by this is probably Corey Sandhagen, who is now going to have to wait for a rematch and perhaps wait for, well, I guess maybe even a trilogy if it goes that way. And then Henry Cejudo, thought we'd seen the last of him, but alas, the MMA retirement curse strikes again. He seems to be sort of crawling his way back into the frame. So who knows when Sandhagen will get his chance, but hopefully soon. But yeah, we'll see. I think. I mean, are you sort of any more firmer in your Jan prediction after seeing that first fight?
Yeah, I think especially now with kind of, as you said, like 4 rounds of data, I would be much firmer in picking Jan. I think he'll be able to get going much earlier in the fight than he did in this one. And I think he will be more confident in dealing with the grappling of Sterling, knowing that he can kind of handle himself there. He kind of probably knows what Sterling feels like in terms of his strength, the kind of the moves that Sterling will like to do and stuff like that. I think Jan is quite a kind of like processual fighter like that. He likes to get his reads. So with that, I'd be more confident in picking Jan in the rematch.
Yeah. Okay. Let's make our way out of title fight territory and into the rest of the card. First one we come to is Islam Makhachev, Drew Dober. I mean, this was a rout, and I love Drew Dober, but he never really got going in this. And I mean, Makhachev looks serious, and he needs to. I mean, people talking about giving him RDA. Can we stay away from wrestlers and RDA, please? I've seen that enough at welterweight. I don't need that at 155 as well. But he needs someone in those rankings because this guy is seriously good.
Yeah. He's very smothering. Obviously, he's going to draw comparisons to Khabib, given that they're like friends. Khabib's really hyping him up now. They do fight in a somewhat similar way. I think there are key differences though. Makhachev isn't nearly the passer Khabib is. Khabib cuts through guards like nothing. Makhachev passed Dober without too much trouble, but he's not the same passer that Khabib is. He's also Makhachev plays a much more kind of tighter kind of cross-face game, whereas Khabib really goes for the rides and catching the wrists to fold you over on it. And
it was a bit more sort of not traditional, but there wasn't as much of Dagestani handcuffs or whatever you want to call them, and sort of ground and pound. It did seem sort of a bit more sort of not slow pace, but as you say, he was working his way through the guard, and it all, as you said, it all seemed a bit more sort of just sort of tighter, I guess. I think
so he plays a much more kind of low kind of shoulder pressure-y game, I suppose, his top game, which means that he doesn't get the opportunities to strike that Khabib does. So if you watch that, he's nowhere near the ground and pounder that Khabib is either, who's absolutely ferocious. So there are comparisons there, but I do think with his game in that sense, it's not necessarily as suited to MMA as Khabib's would be. So it'll be interesting to see how far he goes. I don't know if I think he would struggle more with some of the upper echelon of the division. Kind of due to those stylistic kind of limitations there. But it'll be interesting. I still think that going forward he'll be great, and also his trips looked absolutely fantastic in this as well. They were
the
brilliant.
trips were really good.
And also in the third, once he knew kind of that how much better he was than Dober in the grappling, he really just started to kind of big brother him. Some of it wasn't even technical grappling. He just bear hugged him at one point, just grabbed him, body locked him, and squeezed him. And it's Dober didn't like it. And even the choke wasn't really a traditional arm triangle. I don't think even the arm was across the neck, but just the pressure, the shoulder pressure was enough for Dober to tap. So yeah, really started to impose his game as it went late, and that was very impressive. I like that from Makhachev.
No, it was a very good all-round performance. Elsewhere, Rakic Santos, don't really want to spend too much on this, mainly because not much happened.
I can't even remember it, to be honest. It was just boring.
Rakic has sort of got this. I don't know how he's brought up this sort of idea that he's this really aggressive gung-ho fighter. I mean, okay, his Jimmy Manuwa knockout was nasty, but in the Uzdemir Smith and Santos fight, okay, he's looked good, but he's not a sort of come forward pressure fighter. He's just sort of, he'll stay at range and use those absolute, tree trunk thighs just to batter you, which is fine. That's his game plan and he does it well, but he's not a, an all-action fighter like Santos can be. Santos was just sitting on the outside, not really doing a whole lot. I don't know how that knee is, but evidently he was scared to rush in and just sort of stood on the outside and just got picked off. Really, there's not really much more to say.
I think at the time I probably could have said more about this, but this fight was just in and straight out of my mind. I just kind of wanted to forget it. I was whatever. That was a fight that happened. I don't care about that. Thiago Santos looks not very good anymore since knee surgery. To be honest, not even since knee surgery, because he looked better against Glover, even though he got finished. He looked more offensively dangerous. Whereas in this fight, he just don't know what could he do to Rakic? He didn't really seem to be able to do anything. The main takeaway from this is that Rakic is absolutely massive. Rakic looked huge, I thought. So that's that. And to be honest, John Jones managed to have a very good career at light heavyweight by being huge, and at least when he was young, a decent wrestler. So let's see if Rakic can impose something using his size as the basis. I think he's got a chance. So yeah, we'll see how far he goes, but I'm not particularly interested in him.
Yeah, I can't say him either. For Santos, yeah, we'll just see what happens with him. Right, we'll work our way into the last sort of few. Dominic Cruz, Casey Kennedy, split decision. Not quite sure how that was, but 28-29 and then a 29-28 and a 30-27. Bizarre post-fight call-outs aside. Thoughts on Dominic Cruz? Looked good, albeit against quite a step down. The leg kicks were obviously there for Kenny some of the time. I felt like he didn't go to them as much as he needed to and as much as he should have. But Cruz's footwork was good. It was looking similar to how he looked in his heyday, but probably not quite the same Dom Cruz, but still a good version.
Yeah, I think he looked. A lot of the things were still there. He did look, I think, quite a bit slower. I think that was fairly noticeable. He definitely slowed down a lot. And then, as you said, Kenny did a decent job. Yeah, got to the leg kicks enough. But just really couldn't kind of build off that to anything else. I can't remember. Did Cruz get... I remember early on, at least, he couldn't really get his wrestling going, but I thought he might have. Did he take him down late?
I think end of the second and end of the third, he might have taken him down. Certainly end of the third.
Yeah, so I think that was something Cruz kind of needed. He needed to get that to kind of feel comfortable or feel like that he has won the round, I suppose. But it was something that early on, I think he did try a few times, but couldn't quite get to. But then, yeah, managed to build it in later on. So it wasn't like it was a fun fight, but it wasn't like great from Cruz. It was just like, okay, you're still capable of doing some of the things that you're good at, but in other ways you're not quite the same. So yeah, Cruz can probably go on and have a few fun fights there. Like, I don't know, whatever the weird call out was, probably not going to happen. But if he fights Frankie Edgar, I think that could be quite fun. Just like some cool old man fights would be quite cool for Dominic Cruz. Fight Aldo as well, why not? So yeah, just something like that. I think I'm not that interested in seeing him go for a title run.
No, a good performance from him. You didn't catch the Phillips or Askarov, but I mean, Phillips, I think, looked really good. Solid kicks, really good sort of all-round performance, good takedowns, very explosive. Yeah, he looked really solid against Song Yudong, and that's, I think, might be his third fight within the UFC. Yeah, his third fight. He's now 14th in the bantamweight ranking, so he's certainly one to watch. And Askarov, yeah, really complete. I mean, against a Benavidez that did look, like the two Figueiredo fights had sort of aged him. I think he was over the hill. Really nice. I've got down here on my notes. Really nice front kicks. He sort of he didn't, a lot of the front kicks we sort of see people come through with their rear leg and throw the front kick. He was sort of throwing his front kick with his lead leg. And it was really sort of, Benavidez certainly for the first couple of rounds couldn't pick it up. He was sort of front kicking to the body and then coming up to the head, but then also sort of question mark kicking with it. Really good stuff with that. Good takedowns. Again, another complete performance, but Benavidez is certainly over the hill in that sense. Askarov probably gets the winner of Moreno Figueiredo, but we'll see what happens there with that fight, and then also the Garbrandt situation. I don't know what's going on with him. Kai Kara-France versus Rogerio Bontorin. I mean, a really nice comeback, but also a Herb Dean classic with the finish.
I feel like this is just a new feature every card. We've gone through the Akarunas, that was a feature. Now we're on to the every week we point out how Herb Dean's a terrible referee these days. And this was just fairly abysmal. Like, there were just so many opportunities to like make it clear that you've stopped the fight instead of cause the not stopping the fight when Bontorin nearly crushed his own neck, with the way he fell initially. Not stopping it there was a bad choice. And then when he fell over, trying to get up after that, you should have clearly stopped it there. But then just the overall confusion that was caused and just.
I mean, Kai Kara-France went on sort of a victory procession, clapped everyone on the top of the ring fence, thanked his coaches, and then proceeded to go land another shot. And Herb Dean still hadn't waved it off.
I think he did. I think in Herb Dean's credit, small credit, I don't think Kara-France actually managed to land a shot. He just
no, he didn't.
Threatened to hammer it. So fortunately that didn't happen. That would have been abysmal if Herb Dean allowed. That would have been. I don't think Herb Dean should be allowed to ref again if he allowed that to happen. But thankfully that didn't. But still, just he continually makes mistakes. It's not just every now and again. It's almost every fight he referees. So, yeah.
That is the Herb Howler brought to you by the Knockout Podcast. But yeah, anything else you want to mention? I mean, Tim Elliott put on a good performance. Bizarre sort of in fight sort of back and forth about Jordan Espinosa's ex-wife or ex-girlfriend. I mean, I don't really want to get into that, but that was very bizarre.
Yeah, I didn't watch that one. Yeah.
Essentially,
I have heard, but yeah.
Yeah, very, very bizarre. I guess the last one we both caught was, I think, what was the fight of the night? Yeah. Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Carlos Ulberg. I mean, Kennedy Nzechukwu taking sort of the Alistair Overeem rope-a-dope technique. Certainly out of that sort of school of thought.
The Homer Simpson school of thought.
Really. And it worked because, okay, he was getting, lit up to the body, but he stayed in there. Ulberg tired and forgot perhaps one of the basic rules of fighting, which is, if you're getting punched to the face, maybe try raising your hands.
Yeah. raise your hands, move your head, but it is hard to do when you completely gas out in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So, just some vintage light heavyweight cardio from Allberg there. So, what you can do about that? But yeah, it was a fun, sloppy fight for as long as it lasted. But what you can do? Allberg did look, in his defense, for the first 2 minutes, fairly decent. He hit the body well.
Yeah.
He also mixed in his kicks well. Like he punched into kicks, kicked in punches. So he did that well. But it was just you have to be able to do that for at least 2 rounds.
At least have the Claudia Gadelia, one round and then 2.5 of the next, because then at least you can get a split decision. You can't be, half a round is no good to anyone.
It was bizarre, but what are you going to do? It's light heavyweight.
Yeah, exactly. But no, a really solid card from top to bottom. Lots to talk about. I mean, that is very good stuff. Okay. On to, we didn't mention this at the start, but there is a fight card coming up. I will not even believe it's happening until the bell goes and Leon Edwards is actually in the cage. But he is fighting. It's not the best card. As we mentioned before we went on air, there are some, Hani Yahya, Nasrat Haqparast, Charles Jourdain, Angela Hill. Dan Ige, Gavin Tucker will be a fun fight. I think Jonathan Martinez was a fun one. I think Jonathan Martinez, he beat Thomas Almeida.
Right.
Jonathan Martinez, Davy Grant could be a fun one. So there's some interesting ones on there, but I guess the only really one with a whole lot of relevance, which we'll talk about now, is a whole lot of sort of division relevance. Leon Edwards, Belal Muhammad. I think in an interview yesterday, Dana White said that if Edwards wins and looks good, he'll probably get the next shot after Usman Masvidal 2, I guess.
Why are they doing that? God.
Yeah, who knows? I think on paper he should. He is the better fighter. He's got the better. Resume. I think he's better technically. My only fear is against a fighter like Belal Muhammad, who we know who he fights. He is, he's going to be going forward all the time. He's going to pressure you. He's going to have you backing up. You would like to think. How is a fight like that, a guy that's going to start fast and probably you can assume can go for 25 minutes? How's that going to go against a guy who hasn't fought since July 2019, has had COVID? I'm fearful that my only fear is if Edwards doesn't sort of get on top of Muhammad early on, it could get sort of awkward for him and sort of it could be 10 minutes in and staring at sort of at an 18-20 scorecard.
Yeah, I think Muhammad is he is. I think when he's fighting the fight that he wants to fight, it is him pressuring forward, really going for it. But more kind of fundamentally than that, I think he just wants to be the guy that's setting the pace. If you look back at his 2 recent fights, Diego Lima, he was really pressuring and putting the pace on Lima. But against Lyman Good, he played a much more back foot fight. But even on the back foot, he managed to still generally set the pace, which is much more difficult to do. So that was quite impressive from Muhammad. But I think Edwards has fought a decent few guys that, he's fought, although it was a few years ago, Vicente Luque, who's a heavy pressure fighter as well. He's also fought RDA in his most recent fight, who wasn't quite the pressure fighter at welterweight as he was at lightweight, but still that's generally the RDA game. So Edwards is fairly good at diffusing that pressure. He's got good footwork and is fairly disciplined in making sure that he circles off the fence in quite a timely order. So he does that well. He also he will counter you as you come in and does he likes to be the one that finishes an exchange. So if you just want to jab him or you're attacking him in like the first layer of kind of exchange, he will extend that to make sure he's the one that finishes. So he does that quite well. And also one of the other kind of key kind of pressure diffusing things that he does is that he will, like, as you try and enter on him, he will just kind of like duck in, go take it to the clinch, grab a hold of you, grab a collar tie, something like that. He's very disciplined about doing that, and he's one of the like kind of top clinch fighters in MMA at the minute. So as you pressure him, you give him more opportunities to do that. So I think that with kind of like that kind of arsenal, I think against Belal Muhammad, who is a good pressure fighter and does kind of like set the pace, but isn't doesn't hit crazy hard, so isn't like too threatening, or doesn't have a solid wrestling threat. Like he will mix it up and wrestle, but isn't the wrestler that like Kamaru Usman is, or even probably Vicente Luque. And Edwards was able to mix it up and scramble very well with Luque. So kind of without that threat, I think that Edwards will, or if he's at his best, obviously he's been out for 2 years, so we don't know, shouldn't have too much trouble diffusing the pressure from Muhammad, I don't think. So yeah, that's how I see kind of like the general kind of like shape of the fight.
Yeah, no, I think I do agree. I think especially also, we'll see how Belal Muhammad sort of tries to go with this fight. I think Edwards's clinch work and sort of entry sort of in the clinch and especially leaving the clinch, good elbows. Yeah. We saw that against Gunnar Nelson especially, and against RDA. So I think hopefully there's a complete enough package. Actually, I'm looking at this and it's only a split decision victory over Gunnar Nelson, which is interesting.
Yeah, that was a terrible. I remember watching that actually. It was a terrible judging.
I don't remember
he battered Gunnar Nelson.
Yeah,
no, he really
But yeah, no, that is bizarre. But yeah, I think he'll have a complete enough arsenal to hopefully deal with whatever threats Belal Muhammad can face. And I just hope for his sake.
I do think you are like kind of right in identifying like down the stretch, like really late. I think it could be interesting, especially like he did supposedly have quite a severe bout of COVID, which obviously affects the lungs. So going into the 5th round, it could be like, and Belal Muhammad doesn't really get tired. He's very strong in terms of his cardio. So I think that will be interesting late if and also I don't really see a finish in this fight. Belal Muhammad is very tough and Leon Edwards isn't that much of a finishing threat.
Yeah, he's not that type of fighter, is he?
Yeah. So I think it probably will go late and it'll be interesting to see how Leon Edwards looks.
Yeah, I'm looking at his record now in the UFC. He's his only finishes are in his second fight, which is after 8 seconds, and against Peter Sobotta, that was quite literally in the last second at 4:59. So yeah, I think both fighters are geared towards the full 25 minutes. It'll just be as you say. How sharp does Edwards look after that time off and with the various health complications he has, and I think Edwards on his day, if he's looking as good as he can be, I think he's more than well equipped to deal with Belal Muhammad. But if he's not on it for the first couple of rounds or down the stretch, then Muhammad could be a tricky customer. Yeah.
But no, I think I really enjoy watching Leon Edwards fight. So, and Belal Muhammad's fun as well. So I think overall it should be a really good fight.
No, fun, and also got my sort of kudos because I think he trained with Otman Azaitar sort of after all the weird things Azaitar had on the McGregor card. I think Azaitar was sort of like on his Instagram story being like, wishing Muhammad good luck, going into battle, and Muhammad just goes, "What's in the bag?" And Azaitar's like, for God's sake, and just cancels his story. But that was pretty good. So Muhammad gets my kudos for that. Yeah. An interesting fight. We'll certainly be sure to preview it for next week. Also review it rather.
We've
also got Brunson Holland coming up next week, and actually one that's gone under my radar: Gregor Gillespie, Brad Riddell.
That is a very good fight, actually. I'm very.
That's a fun fight. Leonardo Santos, Grant Dawson. That could be all right. Not a whole lot else other than that, I'm going to be honest. But we will look. Paul Craig was supposed to be fighting, but he's been taken off. We'll look forward to all of that stuff next week. So unless you've got anything else to add, Jack?
No, I don't think I've got anything else to say.
Lovely stuff. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. Quite the probably quite a bumper episode. I'm not sure how long it'll come out, but stay safe, everyone. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week for episode number 50, I think.
See ya.